Welcome to Drinks Coach, another very special edition, part 3 of Julian and Sandra's garden. You see before you the closest thing I can get to a bistecca alla Fiorentina, which is the ultimate Tuscan Italian beef fest. It is in fact a 5-week dry-aged belted Galloway rib chop, which I've done on a disposable barbecue, which is going to be served with some watercress, just lightly dressed, salt, olive oil, sweet corn. That is absolutely it. Okay, enough about what I'm going to have for dinner. What's this all about? Well, if I was to pick one wine in the whole wide world that I like to drink with beef, it's Chianti. And some people have been very, very kind after the Chianti Classico trade show in London and sent me various samples to try. And I've picked out of them some beautiful examples of Chianti, and hopefully I can express my love for Chianti, why it goes so well with beef, and tell a little bit about the history of one of the most famous wines in the world in the process. So, we have Chianti Classicos. Now, Chianti is a region in Tuscany between Siena and Florence. And there are one or two very, very famous sites, but the core centre site is based around two cities of Rada and Greve in Chianti. There are 7 sub-regions of Chianti. The most famous would be Chianti Rufino, which is the furthest away from the sea, very high altitude, makes extraordinary wines, which is a DOCG as well. Shout out to my favourite wine there, one of the great, great red wine estates of the whole of Italy, which is Selva Piana, and they make killer olive oil as well. So what we've got here is the old guard, the classic centre, the most typical, most sought after and revered wines made in Chianti. Now, a lot of you watching this will probably think, isn't Chianti the kind of wine that you serve in one of those like baskets, as what they call a fiasco? Well, we do have the red gingham tablecloth, so you'd expect the wine to be a bit cheaper and a bit lower rent than this, but these wines are top darts. Chianti is driven by one grape variety. In fact, all Chianti has to be made from 80% of this variety. And that's a grape variety which I think in some ways is overvalued and is given too much credit in some cases, because there's an awful lot of ordinary wine out there made from it, and that's Sangiovese, the blood of Jova, as it were. And Sangiovese is a grape variety which has a lot of spice. Famously, Jancis Robinson, master of wine, the female wine guru, probably the world's most famous female wine writer, said that Chianti, and specifically Sangiovese, smelt reminiscently, but not unpleasantly, like drains. Just to follow on from that, which isn't a good start, is it? But following on from that, I did a TV show called Richard and Judy back in the 90s, and we had a wine club, and I went on about saying that the reason why I like Chianti so much with beef is it's seasoned. It has a taste of spice and seasoning, and it's almost like somebody's put a drop of Worcester sauce in your wine. And that got me into a lot of trouble, because Liam Perrin sponsored the programme, and I didn't know this, so it looked a little bit dodgy. Anyway, while we're resting this amazing beef, oh, look at that, God, so juicy. Oh, God, I can't wait to taste it. Lovely. Beef and Sangiovese, what could be better? Okay, so we've got a range of wines here. Chianti Classico, which means the original region of Chianti. Wines that have Chianti Classico DOCG adorned on their labels are required to be 80% Sangiovese. There's other varieties you can add. Canaiolo is a traditional variety, quite rustic, adds a bit more spice. But also in an attempt during the 90s and the early 2000s to promote the wines of the region with a little bit more international perspective, it became legal to make the wine up to 20% from Merlot and Cabernet. I don't really approve of that, because the Chiantis that really sing Chianti and are uniquely Chianti and uniquely from Tuscany, the ones that really blow my mind, almost always 100% Sangiovese, but there are exceptions. Yes, good place to start. So we have different vintages here as well. We have 2019, which is a wonderfully warm vintage, very, very attractive to drink young. I'm really, really fond of it. 2018 was another smolderingly hot vintage. I was capable of making some wines for long aging. This one, in fact, is an organic wine. It's been made for 1 billion years. Verrezzano, Castello Vicomagio has been making wine since 1170. We've got Mole De La Molle, which is one of my favourite Chianti Classico reservas. Come on to what that means in a minute. And then we have Fonti. Then we have 2 Chianti Classico Gran Selezione. So what we've got here is Chianti in 3 pay grades. You've got Chianti Classico, classic. You've got Chianti Classico Riserva, with an I. And you've got Chianti Classico Gran Selezione. So what's the difference? Chianti Classico, by law, has to be 12 months old when you bottle it and sell it. So the wine can be aged for 10 months in oak and then put in the bottle for 3 months, but then it is not allowed to be sold until it's had that time to settle in the bottle, so it's ready to go. Chianti Reserva has to be 2 years old. It has to be 24 months in wood, actually. And then finally, Gran Selezione, which is made from the very, very finest grapes from the top vineyards, and in some ways is almost a caricature of what Chianti is. The wines have to be higher in alcohol, have to be minimum 13%, like Barolo on the other side of Italy, but also it has to be aged for 30 months in wood, which gives it lots and lots of structure and flavour. But these wines start, especially if you add Merlot and Cabernet to the mix, to start looking like a Californian wine or an Australian wine, which is something that obviously Americans like very much. A lot of Chianti sold in America, a lot of Italians in America, but also China. They like their wines big, powerful, rich, insanely intense. So we've got wines here from big producers and small producers, some which I'd never come across before, and some which I'm very, very familiar with. So let's crack on with this. Oh, just going to touch the beef again. Emma, she has no idea what she's letting herself in for there. Fantastic. Guado Alto. This is Castello Vicomagio, which is one of the great traditional estates in Chianti Classico, along with people like Mazzei, Felsner Beredenga, some really, really famous estates. But Vicchiomaggio is one of those. You can tell just from the chateau, or from the Castello on the front, that's looking like it's 13th or 12th century to start with. I've picked this because I think this wine tastes fantastic when it's young. And in fact, Guado Alto, that's only been made since 2015, it was designed to be a premium Chianti Classico. You didn't have to wait too long to drink. Only 10 months in oak. Big format wood as well. Big bottate, 25 hectolitre. So not small barrels, medium-sized wooden casks. So what is Chianti all about? Well, Sangiovese, as I mentioned, has been given all sorts of unusual descriptions over the years. But this one, I think, is the epitome in terms of grape variety of this entire lineup, and it's the least expensive. You don't have to pay a ton of money to get Royal Chianti. This is £16, worth every penny. I paid £18 for the beef chop, so fair enough, right? So this is Vicchiomaggio. It's called Guado Alto, designed to be drunk pretty much as soon as it hits the market. Has this beautiful strawberry colour. I mean, Chianti or Sangiovese just has this strawberry red. It's not like other wines. I've often picked this in blind tastings when I had to do an exam called the Master Wine Exam. I once looked at the bottle and went, that looks like Chianti. By the time I picked it up and smelt it, I knew I was right. So sometimes colour gives the game away. So, smells of slightly dried, woody, sappy cherries. Kind of sour, but not sour. It smells a bit stalky in a good way. There's a kind of a sinewy, undergrowthy earthiness to it. Vibrant colour. You can drink that on your own. It's amazing with duck pate. Delicious with just a slice of hard cheese, parmesan, whatever you choose to pick. But you know, £16 is hard to spend on a wine better than that. It's really underrated, good Chianti. And Chianti isn't just about big, powerful, and will it age for 50 years, because most of them don't. I think it's about this measured, perfectly formed food red. Moving on, we're now at Castello Verrezzano. Castello Verrezzano is a wine that you don't see much in the UK. I've seen it a lot in other countries. I think it's sold a lot in Germany. But this is Francesco Verrezzano on the front, who's a friend of brother or father of... No, it is actually Giovanni Verrezzano on the front. This estate's been making wine, as I said, since the middle of the 12th century. It's a very, very old building indeed. And the guy on the front is famous for a lot of things. He discovered New York for a start. I mean, New York Bay was discovered by Giovanni Verrezzano, and the bridge that crosses from Brooklyn to Staten Island is named after him. 1964, when they built the Verrezzano Bridge, this is the guy. So actually, they come from a winemaking family, as well as being international explorers, which is pretty exciting. Also, the wine is 100% organic. So the grapes have been picked very, very carefully, no systemic herbicides used. It's an area of great humidity and things like that, so it's quite a risk, just making sure that the vineyard is so well groomed that nothing happens to the grapes in the process. Also, Verrezzano, typical of Chianti Classico, is at quite high altitude. It's been 300 or 400 metres. That's approaching 1,300 feet, I think, in old money. Here we go. So this is a Chianti Classico, a year older. Different style, not designed to be so precocious and ready. Oh, it's got some smoky, earthy notes. There's the smell of stone, that smell of, well, it's a phrase that everyone's using now, it's very trendy, but there's a phrase called petrichor, which is the smell of stones. When some rains hit, it's a hot day and the water evaporates and the stones dry out, that smell in the air, that it's almost like the minerals in the soil have been thrown into the air, into the atmosphere, and you can smell it. It has that. That wine smells wonderfully savoury, and it's got that Liam Perry's Worcester sauce edge to it, with the almost soy sauce edge, which I can only imagine is going to be divine with the steak. You can almost dip the meat in the wine, I imagine. Well, it's a beautiful wine. You can tell because it's organic that maybe they've used wild yeasts. The wine has a sort of broad, rich, much more multi-layered complexity in the mouth. This wine is kind of driven through the snow with like sour cherry fruit. It's almost like putting cherry syrup on your ice cream. It's really, really fruity, but has that sort of extra gravitas you're looking for. But this one, much more about structure than flavour. It's kind of rich, stony, edgy. It's crying out for a bit of protein to really soften that. And I imagine it's going to taste as smooth as a baby's bottom when you've got meat in your mouth. At the moment, it's still showing its youth and its anger and its vigour. Right, so moving on. Lamole De La Molle. Now, this is a 2017 Riserva. So now we've gone to a wine where necessarily they've picked grapes which are probably older, from vines that are older. The grapes are more concentrated. The wine has to be held back for longer. This wine is bigger. So these wines, just to give you an indication, first one was 13.5%. Second one, 14%. Well, this is 14 and a bit. And also 2017, I remember, was sort of kind of written off early as not very good vintage compared to the brilliant vintages we've had. And it, to be fair, had to follow what is largely considered to be one of the greatest vintages since records began, which we shall come on to in a minute, which is 2016. But I like 2017. Last year at the International Wine Challenge, didn't find out what it was, but there was one 2017 Riserva Chianti that we tasted, and I said, this wine's incredible. I scored it 97 points. Certainly the best Italian red I've ever tasted at that competition in 25 years of judging it. I'd love to know which one it is. Maybe it's this one. Oh, just 1 minute. I'm just making sure I don't burn my corn on the cob. Yes. There we go. Move around a bit. To be fair, it doesn't quite burn. Okay, right, moving on. So, next. Lamole De La Molle. So 2017. What's so special about this one then? Oh, by the way, prices. Yeah, I didn't say that. This one, I'll try to look it up. You're around 20 quid. It's a bit more expensive than the other one, but maybe a bit more effort went into making it. Lamole De La Molle, this is £30. Now we're kind of skipping into the real kind of big boy wines. I remember reading a tasting note about this in Falstaff magazine, which is like Germany's like decanter magazine, very fine wine collectors magazine, and it described the wine as taking cherries and watermelon. And I thought, can you really taste watermelon that strongly? And I have to say, you nailed it with the watermelon. It just smells. There's a kind of a, you know, when you eat watermelon, it has a lovely sweet fruitiness, but there's a kind of a vegetal cucumberiness under it. Well, that's here. And despite this vintage being relatively downgraded when it was first produced, it has produced what I think are very, very, very pleasant wines. Complete wines. It's one of those vintages which happens sometimes where it doesn't all go to plan, but after a lot of struggling, the wine still turned out great. You can never really tell. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's crying out for a piece of beef. Oh, so delicious. Yeah, like the Worcester sauce thing, it's almost like there's somebody's put some sumac and some powdered coriander and some dry rub, some savoury in there. Quite magnificent. I can imagine that goes very, very well with things like bolito and sausage type dishes, you know, maybe wild boar sausage, something like that would be fantastic with that as well, with some beautiful whatever that goes with it. Cheesy polenta, perhaps. Right, last three wines, all 2016. How flippin' lucky am I? I mean, I didn't pay for any of these wines, remember. These wines were picked out of a group of other wines. So thank you very much to the Institute of Chianti Classico and to Victoria and Alison from Dilla Morel, who sent me some samples because I couldn't make the tasting. 2016. What's so special about that then? Well, Lafonte more importantly, Lafonte De Panzano. This is another Riserva. Okay, so it's a year older than the one before it. Not a very well-known estate, actually. I think it took me quite a lot of looking up to try and find any details about this wine. But I'm very, very fond of it. This has some Merlot and some Cabernet in it, so this is the exception. These so far have all been straight up and down Sangiovese, like I wanted it. This one's been a French oak barriques, like Tonneau's classic Bordeaux barriques for 24 months. It's very common and expected for Chianti to be aged in larger bottles, larger barrels, because the wood texturally doesn't subsume the wine. I saw a very good piece to camera which Dr. Jamie Good did recently on Instagram, where he had Querciabella, which is one of the great estates as well, from 2017. He was talking about the detail, the sumptuous detail. Whenever I taste Chianti and it's not over oaked, it reminds me of the crenellations on the castle, and the mannerism, the texture of the stone. There's a graininess to them, which I think which makes them endlessly fascinating and toothsome. This is from a tiny vineyard for Chianti terms. It's 8 hectares. Smells fairly backward still, a bit tight. Probably been hibernating before I pulled the cork. Probably wasn't expecting to wake up just yet. It's quite delicious. Absolutely fantastic. Wine Advocate, which is the sort of like the font of all knowledge, they scored this wine in the 90s, about 92, 93. I'm inclined to think the wine's slightly better than that. Definitely has gold medal written on it, this wine. At the risk of boring you, I'll move on. Oh dear, I'm burning all the corner of the cod. So I can move it from here. There we go. That'll do it. Okay, so Valiano. This is from the Piccini family estate. This was bought, Castelnuovo Beredenga, which was the estate, was bought by Piccini. Piccini is a household name now. If you want to buy Chianti Classico, even own label Chianti Classico from Waitrose, they have this range called Number One, made by Piccini. If you go to Tesco's, Piccini. Taste the difference, Piccini Riserva. And their wines don't tend to be that expensive, but they're a very, very large producer, very modern. The wines are made in a modern way, very, very good at producing what people want in the retail sector. But this is, I think, the top of what they're trying to do. And we've gone from Riserva to Gran Selezione. So this wine is making a statement. If you're going to actually decide to categorise and classify a wine as Gran Selezione, it means it's made from the oldest, your best vines. It's got to be 13% alcohol, like I said before. This wine, I imagine, has got quite a chunk of Merlot in it, or Cabernet. I can taste it. And it's very glossy. And although it wouldn't be my choice to drink as a Chianti per se, let's just judge it as a wine. It's flipping delicious. So Valiano is one of the estates that's been subsumed into Piccini. And I've got some prices here somewhere. 25 quid. Okay, so not mucking around from an estate that sells supermarket Chianti at £6 or £7 at the very bottom, but probably goes up to about 15 quid. This is pretty hardcore. And I imagine that Valiano as an estate is much older than Piccini. Piccini started off in about 1881 with 7 acres of vineyard. Now they're one of the largest owners of vineyard in the whole of Tuscany. Well done, fellas. Very modern looking, I think you'll agree. Kind of has the look of a modern bistro in Milan, where that one looks more trattoria. Hey, Luigi, right? So there we go. Is that racist? Probably. Okay, right. It's a bit dumb. There's lots of oak there. I can smell vanilla. Incredibly soft. Incredibly soft. In fact, blind tasting this wine would show probably better than my perceptions. Knowing it comes from a big producer, I'm probably being a bit down on it as not being a single estate with loads of hard-working people with hats and big cigars. This is classy. This is made by somebody who knows what they're doing. And we're in 2016. One of the greatest vintages in Tuscany. One of the most wonderful vintages in Piemonte as well. Again, I'm thinking beef. This is probably more your fillet steak, more refined. Very full-flavoured. Bravo, well done, in a modern way. But I'm going for this one. That's more my drink. Finally, Sicelle, another producer that's not very well known. Pasolino dalla Onda Borghese. Contessa Caterina is written on the top, so sounds like it's got some pedigree of sorts. But also, if you notice, this wine was sent to me. This may not have been a finished bottle. I imagine this might be what they call a Bru de Cuve, which means it's been drawn straight, unfiltered from the barrel, in time to make the big trade tasting so people can taste it. But this is only made in French barriques, very expensive barriques. This isn't 14% like the last three, but only 13.5, which I like, because I want these wines to have more compactness and more tightness and more sweet and sour. That's, to me, what Sangiovese and Chianti means. It's pretty good. I think we're in the sort of like the realms of 30 plus now, £33 maybe. But we've gone from 16 to 33. We've only doubled the price in the entire story. There are Chiantis from Riserva Ducale from Rufino, the top wines from Felsner. There are Chiantis which are prestigious that cost a lot of money, but you never really pay more than about £60 for a seriously good Chianti. Bardia Colti Buono Riserva, that's still very, very comfortably under £50. It's probably about 35, 40 quid. And these are some of the best wines made in Italy, trust me. Wow, that's got power. It's almost like, I see beef as a delicate meat. That's almost too powerful for beef. I'd go more wild boar with that. Or if I cook the beef a bit longer, or maybe slow cooked stewed food, in the kind of like the slow food movement, Gambara Rosso style. But wow, what a lineup of wines. What a beautiful day. Only taken a week off this summer. Seemed to have been the right week. So soon I'm going to put some olive oil and some balsamic on my watercress, and then I'm going to smother my whole body in beef chop. See you next time.